Welcome to Solo Sailing with Trev White, and today I'm going to talk about crew. So I solo sail a bit, I also take crew, and on the coming trip, which is going to be Vanuatu, I've arranged to take a crew member, a girl called Harriet. She's from Melbourne. She works in the corporate sector, so she does a bit of racing, a bit of sailing, has done various different sail projects, and she races regularly, but she's never done the ocean sailing, and she's a friend of a mate of mine, and he recommended her, asked if I was doing any sailing because she would be keen. So had a chat to Harriet, and she sounded like a good chick who wanted to learn to sail, and had done a bit of trekking and done the Kokoda and done a number of activities which proved that she had balls. Maybe that's the wrong term, had a bit of gumption about her. I like people who don't fold too easily, and a bit of resilience. So Harriet sounded okay, and I then contacted my friend Esther. So Esther's chick I sailed with to Tonga last year, so she wanted to sail. So Esther was keen, although she had a couple of projects in New Zealand that she was working on and wasn't sure, but she was definitely keen to do a shakedown sail if I was going to do a shakedown sail. So the boat was in Whangarei, and I was still in the heart of this stage. I was talking to people and negotiating with crew and trying to get the boat in the water, and waiting on critical parts which could have ruined my whole sailing season, but things were coming together. So Harriet was locked in. I kept stringing Harriet along because I had to keep pushing back the dates because my heat exchanger was having troubles. First repair didn't hold, then I had to go rip it off and get it looked at by a second guy who was cutting it open, welding it, repairing it, and then I had to, once all that was done, I had to then pressure test it, and had to make sure it would hold pressure for at least 6 months whilst I was sailing. And the alternative to that was finding a new one in Europe, which they're no longer made. There were several on stock, which there don't appear to be any on the shelf anywhere. Getting a custom one made is difficult. Getting a custom one made in Australia is possible, but it's going to cost me about 5,000 Australian dollars. Getting custom one made in New Zealand is also possible, about the same amount of price, but all of these could take up to 3 months to get made because they don't do them regularly. So it was a bit stressful trying to negotiate with people and not fuck them around and ruin their own plans. In hindsight, I wish I had have just gone solo. I mean, it would have been so much easier to just deal with my boat issues. When the boat was ready, I would have then just pushed off, and I probably would have waited a little bit longer. In effect, I'd set timelines, and timelines always put pressure and create headaches. So, but I committed as best I could to a timeline, and that timeline was the 21st of May. So Harriet was coming over. I managed to get the boat in the water like on the 18th of, might have been 15th. And did a bit of a test sail. Boat didn't sink, the engine didn't fail, and Harriet booked a flight. So then, in addition to Harriet, I had a Kiwi girl called Fiona. So Fiona, I wanted more than just one woman on board, and also to make it easy for her, but make it easy for me. Spread the load, the load of crewing long distance of 1,000 nautical miles to Vanuatu. And then I decided I'd also get a guy on board, and I had interviewed Emile. Emile's a French guy, done some sailing, so he had a bit of ocean sailing experience. He'd also had diving experience and freediving experience, so he was a handy guy to have also. So at this stage, I was Harriet, Esther, Fiona, and Emile. And then Emile was having problems selling his van, so he pushed back to Apua, and I was doing a shakedown sail from Whangarei to Apua. And so Harriet arrived on the 19th, and she gave me a hand to sort of provision or help provision. I'd already been provisioning. And then Fiona arrived on the 20th, as did Esther. And we'd done a last-minute shop, and then the next morning on the 21st, we pushed out of the town basin for our shakedown sail. So the idea of a shakedown sail with crew is to make sure that they are suitable for a long-distance sail, make sure that they don't get too seasick, and if they don't want to do it, then they get a chance to leave. And we had about 100 miles up the coast, 200 kilometres to the Bay of Islands, which is nice spot. And that was where I was going to depart from. And really I was departing there just for crew reasons, to do a shakedown, go in there. It was also a little bit closer to Vanuatu, so I could analyse the weather a bit more efficiently. So yeah, we left. The weather wasn't fantastic for leaving. It was going to be pretty shitty. And we ended up sailing down the Whangarei River and had lots of problems with, tides, had to leave at afternoon. We planned to leave the morning before, but we couldn't get the tide, so we left in the afternoon and didn't manage to clear the heads until dark. So that was a bit of a challenge. So we're going out into the ocean at night with raw crew and trying not to lose anybody or damage anybody, and also the conditions were crap. So we had quite lumpy conditions. They weren't in the best direction either. So we had to sail north, and the wind was coming. It was coming offshore, but it was also coming from the northwest. So not perfect, but it was going to, see how well the girls wanted to sail. So I knew Esther could sail in shitty conditions quite well, and she'd taken some scopolamine. I didn't know how Fiona or Harriet was going to go, and I was soon to learn that both of them were a little bit susceptible to seasickness. Fiona had a pretty strong stomach. Harriet was heaving over the side in no time. So that was a bit concerning, but they hadn't really taken seasickness tablets either. They hadn't prepared themselves mentally for the ship weather and new boat, new role, new motion at night. All of those things, they're compounded. And we started our sail, so we had a few people sick. Esther was doing okay. I wasn't seasick. The girls had made dinner before we cleared the heads of Whangarei, which is good. Good to get dinner out of the way because it was going to be a bit lumpy outside. Yeah, and then we headed off up the coast to do an overnight sail, which, everybody sort of wanted an overnight sail. I would have preferred an afternoon sail into an overnight sail, finish in the morning. It would have been pleasant. So we ended up getting overnight, and we probably got into the Bay of Islands the next day around 4 in the afternoon because the wind was against us, so we ended up tack all the way into the Bay of Islands, and we ended up coming in down through the back passage of the Bay of Islands and getting into one of the little tiny bays and anchoring. And it was absolutely beautiful once we got there. But the night before, Harriet's bunk exploded, so I'd repaired it previously. It had, one of the lee boards had come adrift, and so Harriet sort of turning around, she was a bit nauseous, I guess, and the board popped off. So that wasn't great for her. It was healing the wrong way. So I ended up fixing that at night with her sitting, looking quite green, and me, driving 8 screws into the board to hold it all back together. And then the tins were coming out of the cupboards because we'd only just loaded the boat up with food, so everything was pressing on everything, and tins were in her bunk, and tins were on the floor, and it was a typical sort of shakedown shit fight with all green crew. But we got the bunk back together, got Harriet back into her bunk, got the food back into the cupboards. Boat was actually handling really well. The new sail was performing remarkably well. Esther was, rock solid. Fiona was doing pretty well, and we sailed up. I did find out that cooking bacon in the morning wasn't great for the girls because I think I had 2 of them heaving over the side with the smell of fresh bacon. So that was interesting. Normally people love the smell of bacon in the morning, but chicks maybe not. But we eventually tacked our way into the Bay of Islands, got into this beautiful little anchorage, and got the pick down. And it was fantastic. We got into Marquee Cove up in the Bay of Islands and dropped the pick. So I was pretty happy in there. We spent a pretty peaceful night there, so that was enjoyable. And I think the girls were happy to have finished the shakedown sail and got some dinner on. And the bay was glassy calm. It's a beautiful little spot. I don't think there was another boat there, and so that was the plan: get in there, give the boat a bit of a clean up, and then head into a poor marina the following morning. We were intending to go to Russell Pub for lunch or something first, but the wind was a bit offshore, so it didn't make that anchorage very viable, which is a shame because I quite like that little pub at Russell. But we had a good night and some nice food. Good thing about having all-wheel crew, their food is always fantastic. And then the next morning got up, so Fiona was, up, jumping over the side for her morning swim. So she comes from Wellington, where she swims every day, which I thought was fucking mad. But hey, It's a Kiwi thing. And so she was over the side swimming, and then Harriet decided she was going to go for a swim. So Harriet's from Melbourne, probably just as mad. So yeah, had two girls jumping over the side into freezing cold water. Strangely enough, I convinced myself to go for a swim, and so they swam into the beach and back, and I just jumped over, had a bit of a swim. It was relatively exhilarating. Esther thought we were all fucking mad and decided not to go for a swim. She just laughed. So yeah, girls came back, we cooked up brekkie, cleaned up the boat, and then we went in, motor-sailed around to Apua Marina, got in there in the afternoon. But before we got in, we filled up the boat with fuel. And from there, we just did a couple of little things that needed to be worked on the boat. And then we were waiting for Emile. So Emile was our French crew member who was already up there. So we're trying to meet up with him, get him on the boat and get him, accustomed to the boat and, where everything was. I didn't want to be heading straight out to sea without, getting life jackets fitted and everything else. So we got him down on the boat, and we also had to clear customs, so I needed to get passports and finalise the paperwork. So that was sort of, just trying to track people down, which is one of the other problems of having crew. It's always a pain in the arse to, keep tabs on everyone. Fiona went off and caught up with some family members not far away, and Harriet and myself and Esther went to the local pub. So we had a pub meal, and that was all right, little sailing club. It was quite a nice feed up there. And the next morning we met up with, Fiona came back, Emile turned up, we did our sort of orientation of the boat, and then we went across to customs and cleared customs, which is pretty straightforward. And we were having having a couple little problems with phones. So Harriet had dropped her phone in the river in Whangarei, and we had recovered the phone, funnily enough, because it was like about a foot of mud. But sadly, the phone didn't survive. So she got a new phone, which Fiona had bought for her when she went into town and visited her relatives. But yeah, trying to get all your data loaded into your phone and get everything running again when you're under time constraints to leave the country wasn't making anything easier. And in the end, we had to leave by midday. Had a sort of cut-off time from customs. They'd given us a little bit of fat, but we still didn't resolve all the issues with Harriet's phone. But she had enough things going on that it was we could make do. And we had email working, and with Starlink, it allowed her to maintain communications with her family. And yeah, so at midday we pushed out to sea and motored off towards Vanuatu. So we cleared the Bay of Islands by about 6 o'clock that night, completely cleared it, and we were out in the open ocean. And we had a pretty good start. Like, it was a little bit lumpy for the first 12 hours, but quite pleasant. And the wind was a decent strength wind, so it was pushing us along. We'd only use the motor to clear the harbour, and then we shut the motor off. So that was pleasant. We weren't wasting a lot of fuel, and that was the start of our journey. So Shakedown done, everybody on board, cleared customs, and making our way to Vanuatu. So our destination was Tana Island, which is not the southernmost island, but the second southernmost island in the Vanuatu archipelago. And we were planning to go to Resolute Bay. That was the intent. We didn't get there eventually, because there was a big storm blowing through from the east. And it was my thoughts that, the bay may have been unworkable. I didn't want to go all the way around there, find it was unworkable, then come back to the other side of the island. So I chose what I thought would be the best anchor position, which is Lanaka, which is a little township where you can actually clear customs. So I'd arranged to clear customs in Resolute Bay, which was a special request. But customs are happy enough to do that. And then we didn't end up going there because of the weather, and we ended up anchoring off Lanaka Bay. And it was pretty offshore. It was probably blowing 30 knots when we arrived, but because it was blowing 30 knots, it flattened down the seas, which the little spot we were in can be quite swelly, so you can roll around quite a bit. It's got a reputation for being rolly, but because it was a fairly stiff offshore breeze, it was quite comfortable for us. We arrived there on a Saturday morning, and then we had to track down customs and immigration. We ended up running into immigration on the road, looking for them. So we cleared immigration on the Saturday, and then we cleared cleared customs on the Monday actually. But I'll go into a bit more of the journey. It was we had a pretty good journey overall, except for the last 2 to 3 days of the journey where we got a bit of a blow come through, probably at 35 knots. and just a really uncomfortable swell. So that was probably the only negative to the trip. The rest of the trip was really pleasant sailing. So yeah, but that's TINTIN with crew. So we had 4 people on board, and we did Apua to Lanaka in Tana Island in Vanuatu in 8 days. And not the fastest passage, but it was a comfortable passage, and I deliberately kept the boat quite slow at times to make it more comfortable for crew as they gained their sea legs. And it also just made it more comfortable on the boat period. You can flog it a little bit too hard sometimes. But thanks for joining me, and we'll talk about a bit more of the sail on a future episode. Safe sailing, and see you out there.